Here's a sneak peek from today's episode.
And I think in marketing, it's very much the same thing of when you think about scalability, it's how often, like how many of your marketing motions on a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly basis are setting you up for success or even putting you in the right spot? Or does it constantly feel like you're, shooting a contested 3-point shot from like the half court or something where like you're so far back? Like if that's the majority of the attempts that you're even taking, I could probably predict with relative accuracy the success of your marketing team, the success of your ROI. Are you just putting out this super broad audience on LinkedIn or Google, or are you just blasting your database over and over and over again with like this very generic messaging?
Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Ethan. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Ethan, I'm excited. This is going to be a fun subject. It's going to be kind of a different way of looking at marketing, which I think a lot of people are going to look forward to. But before we dive into that, Ethan, let's get to know you. Tell us about your work history and background and all that fun stuff.
Thank you. And again, happy to be here. This is a great content, great podcast. So super honored to be a part of that. But getting to know me a little bit, career marketer. I kind of had a non-traditional entry point into marketing. I started in public relations, started at Cadillac out in New York, which is a great spot to really understand how brands work with, one of the world's most iconic brands, which is cool. And then since that time, I've actually spent a lot of time in consulting. And so when people ask, like, what is your specialty in marketing? I'd argue that I've spent the most time doing product marketing, but I've kind of bounced around a lot, which is, I think, been a really good experience for me. But yeah, live in Utah, marketer by heart, and trying to be a dad and keep my kids alive at the same time.
Love it. Very cool. It's always fun to talk to other people from Utah as well, which is always a good time. So Ethan, your background, it was interesting. Before we started the podcast, you were telling me about your background and how you have this really cool approach of how you kind of analyze and look at marketing. You look at it almost from like a private equity background where you can look at it and say, great, you've built this system up to a certain point in time. Let's build an algorithm, I believe were your words, and a system to really take this to the next level. What does that look like? What does that mean when you actually say you're kind of looking at that from a private equity standpoint?
Yeah, and I'm sure all my friends in finance are going to just rip me for this, but that really is my approach. Like I said, I've had the fortunate opportunity to do a lot of consulting, which to me almost feels like a study abroad in your career. You get to go in there and see what somebody else is doing, their approach to things. But what I realized pretty early on, especially as I was able to do things like influencer marketing, where you work with a lot of external brands. I've worked with a lot of HGTV stars, a lot of reality TV stars. You start to see just how people approach things and how it's not always numbers backed. And so I'd argue that my specialty in consulting is people who have that like Series B, Series C, so maybe later funding, and they've gone through the stage where they were just kind of swiping, the saying dad's credit card, like just aimlessly. And I come in after that fact and they're like, well, we don't really know what's working. Like, where are the metrics? Where are the stats? And that's where I think, I tend to think that's the most fun part of marketing. And my girlfriend tells me that I maybe have a slight tidgetism is her exact term. But when you take a look and actually think about like a private equity firm, if they were assessing a company, what kinds of metrics would they be looking at? How would they gauge success? How would they gauge how much they'd be willing to invest with the opportunity to turn something around? And at this point in my career where I'm coming in to lead marketing teams, that's really where I find the most fun is saying, okay, well, you guys have spent X amount of dollars on events, but what are those events actually doing? You've spent X amount of dollars on ads, and what are those ads actually driving towards? And that may sound obvious to the average marketer, but when you think through like, okay, but when you think about like your ideal user, I had a company in the past who paid me to write an algorithm who had been in business for 10 plus years. And it was, who is their ideal user and what correlations can you recreate to basically say, I want a lookalike audience of somebody who works for a company that has this much revenue in one of these three industries. And when they interact with this like primary driving force, like that is your best like customer. That is your lowest hanging fruit. That is your ICP persona, whatever you want to call it. But it usually is very predictable when you're willing to look at the numbers like a private equity firm would look at the numbers.
I love that. Okay, that's awesome. So when you are coming into a group, whether it's consulting or it's to lead their marketing efforts in-house, let's say I'm sitting as a marketer currently at a company and I'm like, yes, like we need to do this. We need to do this process. Where would you start? Like, what would you recommend for someone to kind of analyze internally and build this repeatable process and this algorithm for their own business?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, it's that last part I was just saying. I've done this 3 times in the last 6 months for 3 different companies. And I think, again, the lowest hanging fruit is I always joke with my team now, and they love this analogy, as you can imagine, is if I were dating and I would get on dating apps and it was me saying, okay, well, I'm, in my 30s. I want to go find an eligible woman and I'm in the state of Utah. Like, do I just go to Costco and basically just say, okay, women, I am available? And if that were the case, like, what would be like the actual like hit rate for me, right? Like, how many people are actually in my range of people who are okay with me having kids or maybe in the same age range or have similar interests? Like, it's at that point, like, very, very low odds. But if I were to go onto like a dating app and I could set all those parameters for myself, like, obviously it's pretty clear who I'm going to attract, who I'm looking for. And I think at the end of the day, if you don't know who you're looking for, you're going to end up in the same directionless state that you were in your Series B, Series C funding. So all this to say, where I would start is I would start with actually identifying your ICP and not just like going into ChatGPT and typing in like, this is my company, this is what we're looking for, but actually drilling into the numbers. So what I typically do is I'll take every deal that's ever been closed and I'll start to just sit with that data set, like old school Excel spreadsheet. Like I said, maybe take an Adderall or something. And like, you're just like eating this thing. And you're just looking at the cells and saying like, okay, well, like what am I missing here? Like, what are the correlations? Are there industries? I found recently for one of the companies that highly regulated industries have a 70% higher close rate and the deal size is more than double. So if you're looking at healthcare or pharmaceuticals or like a financial services where they're under a much more scrutiny, then that is like the first step. So go in those industries. So that way, when your sales reps are going through like top to bottom, it's like an inverse pyramid. Are they spending 70% of their time in areas where you know that they have the best bet of winning? And when you can start to identify what some of those correlations look like, so highly regulated industries, in that like subset, what is the revenue for them? Who are the actual titles? Like of people you actually talk to when you win, not the users, maybe not even like the decision makers, but who's actually kicking that out for you? And when you get super, super clear and you can walk to every salesperson on your sales floor and basically just go to the bullpen and say, I want you guys to go find these people. And you have like that very clear cut explanation. I think that's where the magic starts to happen instantly. Because then at that point, like you can spend however much money you want because you know that if you're spending that money, you're almost guaranteed a return.
I love that. Okay, very cool. So step one, intimately understand my ICP and not just like the broad speaking TAM SAM and all that kind of fun stuff, like the actual best people to speak to. From there, you said like basically everything you can do will work, but like, what does that mean? Like, are you using that to find your channels, your message? How are you then capitalizing on that information to really systematize it and build out a motion that generates results?
Great question. That's a good point of, do you know it's going to return? To be honest, Benjamin, people are going to be so surprised to hear this, but I had a very lackluster sports career growing up. And I know, like I said, that's probably shocking to a lot of you because I look the type, but I hated losing growing up. And kind of what I decided in my professional career was a lot of that was out of my control because I wasn't, 6'7" and 240 or whatever. I wasn't very good at basketball. I was very mediocre at football. But in my professional career, it was how do I put myself in the best situation to be successful? So setting up a program to where I don't like being places where I have a high likelihood to lose. In football, that would be, me at 6'1", 170. I don't want to be on the offensive or the defensive line because those guys are like 350 pounds and are very fast somehow. I don't know how those genes worked out. I feel like God kind of had some favoritism happening there, but I wouldn't want to be that, right? Because that's so lopsided. And I think in marketing, it's very much the same thing of when you think about scalability, it's how often, like how many of your marketing motions on a weekly, a monthly, a quarterly basis are setting you up for success or even putting you in the right spot? Or does it constantly feel like you're, shooting a contested 3-point shot from like the half court or something where like you're so far back? Like if that's the majority of the attempt that you're even taking, I could probably predict with relative accuracy the success of your marketing team, the success of your ROI. Are you just putting out this super broad audience on LinkedIn or Google, or are you just blasting your database over and over and over again with like this very generic messaging? Are you just showing up at every event possible without any sort of direction in mind? Instead of thinking, okay, well, this event is good. Maybe we're not changing that, but maybe the message at the event does change because you're only looking for 10% of that audience realistically. that make sense?
Yep, I love that. So, one of the things I've run into in my career, and I'm curious how you approach it because it sounds like a very data driven approach. Like you even talked about, I've got the data straight out of the CRM, I'm throwing in Excel, popping the Adderall, and I'm just sitting with data, right? And a lot of marketers don't necessarily, number one, so there's two parts to this question. Number one, don't have access to the data sometimes. So in their company, they don't actually have access to the closed won deals or all the materials that they need to actually go and sit with that data. And number two is even if they did have access, they don't necessarily have the skill set yet, whether it be a SQL query, whether it's using a BI tool, or even just Excel or things of that nature, or running a Salesforce report. How do you recommend marketers up level themselves so they can actually sit with data and make data driven decisions? Because you clearly have figured that out. What did you go through and what do you recommend and what do you do with your teams to kind of up level people in that regard?
Yeah, great question. This probably goes back to my girlfriend's description of me with the touch of autism. But uh, to be honest, I wouldn't consider myself to be highly technical. I think I can sometimes speak the language just based on a career in product marketing in industries like fintech, where you kind of have to. But it's just at the end of the day, it's about being intentional. And again, I don't like losing. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I can go and just try and blast out an email to get something done, or I can go and bug every single person at this company until I figure out at least some kind of direction. I can go and talk to sales reps and say, well, why are you guys looking for these people? Like when you're prospecting, like it seems like you can even ask the question, like, who are you talking to? Like what is your ideal or like your most common? You get on LinkedIn, then what? What happens next? And you just shadow them for a day, maybe 2 days if you want to get the whole team, And like that's a very easy like data gathering approach. There are tons of softwares too. There's a local company called Closed. I've worked with them a few different times and great company for win-loss analysis. It's very reasonably priced. It's very thorough. It's very easy to read after the fact. If you have field events, things like that, I just say like, are you being intentional with that time? What touch points can you go and create, both internally and externally? I always try and make best friends with the RevOps team because the RevOps team lives in this data. So, hey, would you guys mind pulling this for me? I think I could actually help both of us by doing this because then it gives them the ability to track these meaningful interactions after the fact. And so I think once you start to realize that you're actually helping everybody, you're helping the sales reps to make the most of their prospecting time. You're helping the RevOps team get more clear on what they should be reporting on. You're helping the CRO, you're helping the CMO, you're helping, the CSMs and all of the customer support teams as well, because they're understanding that when this person comes with a problem, like they should definitely be listening to it. It just becomes like this willingness to help. But I think it all stems to being intentional. Like, where do you spend your time? You could get something done, but if you're all just doing the same directionless motions, then like you're helping nobody.
I love that. Okay, that's so cool. So this is something that like I really resonate with. Like I'm the guy who would bring like donuts to work and be like, RevOps team, we're gonna be friends. Like this is gonna be a good time, or Salesforce admins, things like that. So I think that there's something cool about that. And there's a lot of creative ways. Like you're a marketer. You know ways to get in front of people, like use that internally and make people's days, build relationships. And like you said, I love how it's a two-way street and you can make their job easier to say, here are the stats that our team cares about. Let's help figure them out. And then you can report on them too, because I know your bosses care about the same thing. And I'll get you what you need and you get me what I need. And ultimately between the two of us, we're going to be set. So I really love that. One thing that I think is synonymous when you use the words private equity, at least from people who have been on the tech side and have seen businesses be acquired by private equity, is there's often trimming of the fat. There is often this connotation of, okay, there's going to be getting rid of some parts of the motion. And I think when we do a deep dive into what we're doing, often we find areas of the marketing side or the business side that do need to be cut. As a marketer, if I'm in this process and I know my ICP and I'm doing all this great stuff and I have found areas that are just honestly wasted spend, how do I approach eliminating those? I think it's really hard for marketers to accept like getting rid of a function and justifying it. Any recommendations or insights there, having kind of gone through that process quite a few times?
Yeah. And first of all, to all the marketers who are in that situation, like you're not alone and that sucks. I'm so sorry. I've done that many, many times and it's never fun. And this is where I think the private equity term really hits home to your point, Benjamin, of you have to not take things personally. Like you have to commit to it. I think the reason those individuals can sleep at night at these private equity firms is because they know that it's not their problem. They didn't create the problem. It's one of those like, I didn't make the beds, I don't have to sleep in it situations. But the best marketers I know, and I've had so many amazing mentors in my career, they move on. You test or you die. And if something's not working, it doesn't mean that you're not working. It means that thing outside of you is not working. So why stick with it? People always joke, and it's like the ultimate cliche in tech, but Steve Jobs cared more about being like, about doing the right thing than being right himself. So he would just switch sides in arguments. And I think there's something to be said about that for marketers as well. If it's not working, abandon it. Go to the next thing. Test away from it. Has nothing to do with you, but be willing to say, well, I want to actually reallocate those funds to areas that put me in a situation where I can't be winning, rather than being in losing situations long term. That's just toxic.
Yep. I love that. Yeah. Cutting ties with the things that aren't working and being comfortable with that. And honestly, if you have the data and you're the one who presents, hey, we tried this motion and it's not working and the data is showing it, and here's that. If you're the one who presents it, you look like a rock star.
Yeah.
If your boss is the one, or someone outside the org has to say, why are we doing this? The data is not looking good. And then you're reactive, then it doesn't look so good. So
that's good. That's real good.
Being the first person to come to the table makes a big difference. And so always analyzing what you're doing and saying, hey, I'm going to cut these 2-3 things so I can reemphasize on others is always a point that I love to make. Ethan, these episodes go by so quick. Thank you for the insights. This was a fascinating conversation. I really do appreciate it. If any of our listeners want to reach out and connect with you online, how and where can they find you?
Probably the best place is LinkedIn. I would love to reach out, love to hear problems. I always love to brainstorm with people too. Like I said, I look at consulting and just kind of general engagements as like a study abroad. So would love to connect with individuals and share thoughts and obviously get some as well.
Love it. For anyone listening, if you scroll down to the show notes, Ethan's information will be listed there with a link to his LinkedIn profile. Go ahead and click on that and connect with Ethan. Again, Ethan, thank you so much for your time and insights today. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.